Welcome to the Learning League podcast, where the most influential minds in learning assemble. This is the podcast that challenges the way we think about leadership and professional development. We're hitting Control Alt Learn to reset outdated ideas, spark innovation, and explore new ways to empower business leaders, people managers, and learning professionals. Each episode, we bring you insightful conversations with trailblazers who are shaping the future of workplace learning and leadership. Whether you're here for fresh strategies or game-changing inspiration, you're in the right place. Today, we welcome Cameron Thomas, a seasoned voiceover professional who began his career as a radio meteorologist before transitioning into voiceover in 2007. Since then, he has lent his voice to hundreds of projects for major insurance companies, colleges, fast food chains, and a variety of tech and health organizations. Cameron has found his niche in e-learning, where his reassuring, friendly voice enhances the online learning experience. His ability to bring clarity and engagement to educational content makes him a sought-after talent in the industry. So fasten your seatbelts and get ready for an inside look at the world of voiceover and how the voice can transform learning. Welcome, Cameron.
Hi there, Cheryl. I'm just buckling up my seatbelt here. Thanks for having me on this. And you've been doing a lot of great work with your podcast. So again, it's a pleasure and honor to be part of your podcast. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I feel the same way. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. I'm just going to jump right in because I'm, really excited. I would like you to share with the listeners your background because life before voiceover is pretty fascinating. So I just would love for you to share that.
Yeah, it was a crazy start to it and something that a lot of people would not expect. And you alluded to it in the intro. I was a radio meteorologist before. So when people ask me, how did you get into voiceovers? I usually just have that one word answer: weather. And people are like, well, how does that happen? That doesn't make sense. It's because I was a meteorologist before. I was a weather forecaster in the Air Force. And then when I got out of the military, I transitioned into a radio meteorologist job. And so I did that for a while. And then when that sort of wound down, I moved away from that industry. And then a friend of mine that I was working with at the time, he's like, hey, Cameron, have you ever done any voiceovers? And I was like, what's that? So then it just got my brain spinning. Like, okay, what is voiceover? So I started doing the research. So when I got out of weather, I got into voiceovers, and it took a lot of research, But that was how it transitioned. I basically took my broadcasting skills and I applied that to the voiceover industry. So that's basically how I got started, was a weather guy.
And it's funny you said that, you did the research, because I think some people just think, oh, I just read a script and it's done. But it's, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is just everything that's involved in this industry. And I have to say, you are one of the high quality voice talents out there. And so that's why I think it's really important that you share today all about how you maintain that level of quality. So we'll get into all of that. But tell us about your first project.
Sure, absolutely. In fact, it goes before I got into voiceovers. Technically my very first voiceover job or project was when I was still in the Air Force doing weather forecasting. I was doing some training for some forecasters, and I was taking pictures of a local weather event, and I was putting it into a slideshow. And then I was putting it together and I thought, you know what? Instead of just typing out the narration, why don't I just record it? So here I was reading into a laptop and just putting my voice to those slides. So
Mhm.
technically, that was my very first voiceover project.
Right. Did
It was
anybody
horrible.
say anything? Like, what did people say?
You know what? I just sort of sent it and forgot about it. I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I don't know how this is going to come across to
Yeah.
people, but I did get some good feedback saying it was
Good.
very, very helpful. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was technically my very first one. But then when I officially transitioned into voiceovers, my
Yeah.
very first job was, I think it was a one-liner. Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you
Oh,
just do this
wow.
one tagline thing?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And they paid me for it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was driving that day. I'm like, wow, that was my very first
You're
job.
like,
It
I
was just
made
one
money
line.
doing that.
It was just one line. And I was on
Unbelievable.
cloud nine. But then it evolved. I think my very first ad or commercial was for a
Yeah.
local bike doctor or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
my first advertisement. But yeah, and then it kind of escalated from there. Got bigger jobs and longer jobs.
Wow.
So that was technically my very first one.
And
Yeah.
you've done commercials.
Yeah.
So it's not just, reading, for education. You've done commercials as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I run the gamut from radio commercials, TV commercials,
Yeah.
e-learning,
Yeah.
explainer videos.
Yeah.
I love doing
Yeah.
those. And corporate narration is a big one. A lot of companies putting
Yeah.
out just like promo videos
Yep.
talking about their businesses. So a lot of that.
Right.
And then so it's been mostly around those genres. But
Yes.
e-learning has been one of my favorites. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, similar to what I do for instructional design and e-learning, you also work in a lot of different industries as well. So that's kind of what we have in common. Is there a particular industry you like the most?
You know, I really do gravitate towards the explainer and the e-learning, the online learning, exactly
Yeah.
what you're doing with your work.
Yeah.
I just feel that instead of the more, yeah, a lot of it is scripted, but you don't have to come across as scripted.
Right.
E-learning, it's more like a casual conversation. You can be a
Yes.
little bit more laid back, a little bit more
Right.
casual. You're not yelling at people. You're not directing people. It's like having a casual conversation, and I think it kind of goes back to my wife was taking some online courses a long time ago,
Yeah.
and she was listening to it. She was just rolling her eyes like, I can't listen to this person. And and it was just one of those things. It's like that's where I wanted to break through that and just say it doesn't have to be that way. You could just
Yeah.
casually talk with somebody. So when you're talking about complicated or detailed instruction or explainers, it's just, hey, you don't have to make it sound so difficult. It could just be this,
Yes.
just be that. So that's where I really enjoy myself. Yeah.
And we do a lot with healthcare and pharma.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite topic? I know you've done like every single topic imaginable, but do you have a favorite?
Uh, well, the medical is definitely a challenge. So I can
Yes.
definitely get a little tongue tied on those.
Yes.
But when it comes to medical, you anytime you come across a script, you have to think about who your audience is. What
Yeah.
is that problem they're trying to solve? And when it comes
Mm,
to medical, usually they are looking for some really, really heartfelt solutions. They need reassurances, and I think that's. I try to. I feel like my voice is helps with that kind of script, being that reassuring, friendly voice when you're talking about that medical solution that they've been yearning for. I need that solution. I need that medication or I need that treatment. And
mm,
it's like, hey, here's this for you. This is what's
yeah.
going to help. So I think that's what fits my voice the best. Those
Yes.
kinds of scripts. Yeah.
And I think you're really good with like even the nurses and doctors, because you have that type of voice that can reassure them that they can provide a specific treatment or patient experience to their patients.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
I can personally speak for that.
thank you. Appreciate that.
So you're at the top of your industry. As I said before, quality is very important to you. And it's because you did the research and you are committed, you take it seriously, right? For those unfamiliar with voiceover work, can you explain what it takes to produce high quality narration, including like your setup and your process?
Absolutely. And there's a lot that goes into it. I've heard that phrase, the more you know, the more you learn about something, the less you know,
Yeah,
because what you may not have known about a particular topic all of a sudden opens up to this world of knowledge that you had
that's
no
right.
idea existed. So it is very common perception to think that voiceovers is just reading a script into a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
By and large, yes, but there's so much that more that goes into it. And part of what I do is helping consult people getting into the voiceover industry, where to get started. But really, it starts with coaching, vocal training, having the skill set that you can provide to a client.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to practice that first and figure out what your voice is best for. Whether it's going to be that medical script, whether it's going to be an automotive commercial, whether it's going to be character work, figuring out what your niche is or where your voice is going to be the best. And then you have to produce your demos. You have to get a demo out there for people to hear what you sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not an easy thing, and it's not a cheap thing either. That is basically your calling card in the voiceover industry, your
I see.
business card. That's what you send to people so they can hear what you can do.
I see.
And that's a big production. You have to get the coaching and training first, then you have to get your demos, and then you have to figure out how to record on your own. The industry years ago, people the biggest voiceovers in the industry, they could go to all the studios in a big city and just go from studio to studio and record. But now the industry has been in your home, in a closet. I built my home studio myself, but it takes knowledge on how to have that acoustically treated sound space where you
Mm-hmm.
record and provide the quality audio. You can probably see in the screen that, this is my microphone. I have sound treatment. This is my sound booth. But you have to ensure that you provide the quality audio for your client. It can't just be, in a kitchen somewhere. It's going to sound horrible. You have
That's
to think
right.
about the acoustics of a room.
That's
That
right.
is big. And because the producers and creative directors, when they hear what you send them, they have that golden ear too. And they can tell exactly where they can pretty much tell where you recorded. So you
That's
have to
right.
that you provide a good audio recording. And then even then, when you do the project, you have to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that you conduct yourself professionally.
Right.
You're prompt, you're following directions, providing the audio, and then
Yes.
the producers directions and everything. So there's a lot that goes into it. A lot that
And
goes.
that's stuff that you have, your home built studio. That's not cheap, you know.
No,
So you have to really see what is your budget to be able to set up your home studio.
exactly. And years ago, the equipment was very, very expensive. That's why people went to all the studios. But now that cost has come down to where you can get a very inexpensive microphone, an audio interface, which is out of the camera shot, and a computer, and you have some recording software. It can be just as easy as that. But making sure that it is quality, the good quality, it is less expensive these days. So the barriers to entry to start doing voiceovers is very low these days. And
Okay.
the equipment is so small. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have like a little interface about this big, a microphone and a laptop, and you can do good quality recording with
Okay.
just that. Mhm.
And is the software, that interface you're talking about, is that you have to pay for that? Most of them you have to pay for.
There are some that you have to pay for. There are
Yeah.
some free ones out there. They can work. but there are some paid subscription services that people use.
Okay.
But the audio interface is the hardware to take the signal from the microphone and put it into the computer. But then you have the digital audio workstation, the
Yeah.
software, or what we
Right.
call a DAW. So
Right.
that is what you record and you edit, and then that's where you can kind of, kind of edit the audio a little bit, and then send it out to the
Right.
client. Yeah.
Because one thing that you don't want, especially with me doing e-learning, I don't want to hear all the extraneous noises in the file. So all of those have to be, I guess, filtered out. Like I had one voice talent, and she just was, every file she sent, it was, she would read a line, and then it was, and then she would read another line. I'm like, yeah, you've got to fix this. I can't work with this. Yeah.
No.
So it's definitely a lot to it after you set out to come up with a process for delivering quality. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that reminds me of when I first started out. I made those mistakes when I first started and learning what my audio sounded like. So you have to really be conscious about where you record, but then the editing part. I think I got my editing skills when I was doing weather broadcasting. Was we had to record. I was recording well over 100 forecasts a day, and you have to get those out within seconds and minutes. And you
Oh,
have to
I
make sure
didn't
that they
know
sound good
that.
so that I could edit everything very, very quickly. That's where I got my editing chops. And there are things you have to consider. How does it sound overall? But then, what are the extraneous noises in there? Are there some breaths that you can take out? Things like that. So you do have to go through it and edit. Make sure it sounds good and make sure it's pristine. You absolutely have to do that. You
Yeah.
can't just send it. Sometimes there are options. Sometimes people do want to have the raw audio so that they can do some level of production on their end. There are some times where instead of recording on your computer and
Mhm.
sending the file to the client, there is some software where you can link into that studio remotely and record directly to that studio. It's called Source Connect,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's actually one of the industry
I had
standards
no idea.
for voiceovers.
I'm learning so much.
Exactly. So you can record directly to their studio and they have the raw audio and then they can produce it from there.
Oh,
Absolutely.
wow.
Mhm.
Okay. Wealth of knowledge today, guys. This is just fascinating, this industry. Let's just jump to other voice actors. Uh, they have to travel. They're remote workers, but hey, things happen. You have to travel, whatever. But they get something in and they have to record. What do you do when you're not home or in challenging places?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And this comes up a lot for a
Hmm.
lot of voice actors. I think the joke is if you want to get a voiceover job, just schedule a trip, go on vacation, because that's when the jobs usually come in, right before you go on the road. But having a travel rig is very important. If you travel a lot and get a lot of jobs, you need to plan on recording on the road. And I've heard all sorts of stories, and I've had to do some myself where you're in a hotel and you get booked for a job. It's like, well, I have to do this in this hotel. And guess what you have to do? You get to make a big old pillow fort.
What?
You start looking around the hotel room and start looking at all the acoustic treatment that you can use in a hotel room. That means pillows, that means the covers, that means the
The
luggage strap.
covers?
And then what you do is you set up your microphone on a bed or a desk and then wrap yourself in these covers and pillows to acoustically treat that hotel room as much as
Oh
possible.
my gosh.
I have even seen pictures of people taking the mattress off of the bed and then making a fort out of that. It's
Oh my
crazy.
goodness.
I've traveled to my in-laws and I had to do a job and it's the exact same thing. I had all these covers draped over me, the pillow, the microphone was falling over. And then It was in the middle of Michigan. You'd think, okay, there's no noise around here. At least as long as I can make this area sound okay,
Right.
I'll be okay. No, guess what they do in Michigan? They cut down a lot of trees. And there's a guy right across the river just
Oh my goodness. And that is the loudest noise. Yeah.
but that's
Wow.
typical for anywhere you live.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that I had to battle was that I live right on a road. That's why I had to build this studio to keep that
Right.
noise out. And
Okay.
I've done it all. I was in the basement, I was up on the second
Yeah.
floor, now I'm upstairs. It's changed over
Hmm.
the years, but I finally have a booth where I can cut that noise out.
Okay.
But a lot of times, if it's not in a hotel room, people record in their cars. And people,
In
I've
the
heard my
car,
friends,
wouldn't that be echoey?
uh, they're surprisingly good. They're acoustically treated, and it's not to reduce the road noise. So it's actually decent for recording a voiceover in a pinch.
You just look weird, but yeah.
Yeah, as long as nobody sees what I'm doing and people are walking by and I'm just recording, it's like, who
I
doesn't do
can
that?
imagine walking by somebody's car and seeing that. Like, what is
Well,
he
it's been
doing?
done. It's been done. A lot of my friends have had to do that, but
Oh my
we
gosh.
get pretty creative.
Well, tell me about any because you're a busy guy, and I'm curious to know if there's any organizations or causes that you're passionate about. It doesn't matter whether it's in or out of the industry, but what are you working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I still stay involved in weather, but actually, I've been
But
involved
you
in.
can't just say that and then stop. What does that mean? What does that mean? I want to know.
I do it for fun. I have a lot of friends and family. They always ask me what the forecast is going to be. So I recently started
Oh,
up the
that's
Facebook
so
page and I
funny.
started doing the forecasts again. So it's once a
I
weather
love
guy,
it.
always a weather guy. So I do that for fun. It's not for official purposes or
Okay.
anything. But in the voiceover world, I am involved with the worldvoices.org.
Okay.
And this is a nonprofit member-driven organization.
Mhm.
Years ago, a group of voiceovers tried to get together, get an association together, probably 15, 20 years ago. It sort of fell apart, lost steam a little bit, but
Yeah.
we're picking that back up with
Yeah.
worldvoices.org.
Okay.
And it's a group of voiceover talent where we are all we try to coach each other, help each other, network with each other,
Yeah.
educate each other,
Mm,
establish those best practices for the industry. Every
mm,
industry has an association. So that's
mhm.
what worldvoices.org is trying to do,
Okay.
is be that home base for voice talent to where we can learn from each other, educate, network, support each other, but
Mm,
developing those best practices for the industry, but not only for voice talent. We also want to bridge that gap to the voice seeker, those seeking vetted professional talent. So they know that they're hiring professional voice talent who know what they're doing.
yes.
And I've been a member for a few years and I've just
Mhm.
gotten more and more involved helping with the conferences. But now I'm part of the executive board. And boy,
Wow.
have we got a lot of stuff planned. We have a powerhouse team
Oh,
of
wow.
executive board members, and we are
Wow.
really putting our minds together to really develop this organization. There
Yes.
are other organizations out there, but this is ours. And
Yes.
this is our home base.
Yeah.
Uh,
Built it
and
from the
really,
ground up.
exactly, and providing podcasts and webinars and educational
Yeah.
resources, mentoring. So when new folks come in, we can set you up with, how to just mentorships, I should say,
Yeah.
and networking. So if you do travel and you don't have a travel rig, hey, I can look up one of my WOVO member. We call it WOVO for short.
Okay.
And I can find, so
Whoa, whoa,
World
whoa.
Voices WOVO. And so now you have a network of folks where, hey, if I'm
Yes.
in this city, hey, I know somebody in this city and I can go use their studio to go record instead of building
Wow.
that pillow fort.
That's really that's amazing. And when you're helping others in the industry, like what are you doing to help them? Because you're a mentor yourself.
Absolutely, yes. I do consulting. So part of my website, I have a consulting page there, and it's not coaching per se. It's
Mhm.
just help because when people get started into voiceovers, there is a lot of information out there, and it's kind of hard to sift through all of that information and figure out, okay, what do I really need to do first?
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. That's where I help establish, like, kind of give you the basics. Here's what you want to focus on first. Here's what you want to focus on next, and then next, and then next. Then take it to the next level with more involved coaching. But it is very difficult to sift through all of the information out there and try to figure out what you need to do. So that's where I help people just get
Yeah.
started with that consulting. Yeah.
Yeah, and is it structured where first you show them the basics, and then you show them how to set it up, or like how like is tell
Mm.
me like how it goes if
Yeah,
someone
exactly.
comes to you.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, absolutely. It's providing some of the resources where they can take, for instance, building your studio. I can tell them what the basics are and give them some basic information, but then I can direct them to resources that can take it in a few steps further.
Got it.
So maybe folks who can help build their studio, or maybe some resources where they can buy a studio. And as far as coaching, hey, you definitely need to get coaching. I know some folks who are really good at this, and I can give them vetted resources for that. So
Okay.
it's kind of pointing them in that direction,
Right
giving them a
direction.
little bit of information first, but then some resources to where they can take it from there.
I got it.
Mhm.
That's excellent. I think it sounds like a really great organization. We're going to have that on the screen and also in the description for those who want to visit the website.
Thank you.
I'm going to get serious for a minute and talk ethics, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
uh, Ethics in the industry. Are there any common misconceptions or challenges in maintaining standards?
There are a few out there, and I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about before is, anybody can do it. And I think a lot of people think they can just go out and get a voiceover to do it for very little cost. That may be true. But like we've talked about, there's a lot more that goes into it. Can you find somebody who can just rip off a script and just record it nicely? Maybe. But are you reassured that that person can give you good quality audio and quickly and at a decent cost? So the industry as a whole wants to ensure that vetted professional talent are out there and that we're available, but it does cost. I mean, there is a cost to anything, and we don't want people
Correct.
to just think that they can just get something for cheap. I think any freelancer or anybody putting out a service doesn't want to just provide it for cheap. Um,
No,
so that's where we're trying to establish ourselves as professional vetted talent out there,
yeah,
but that have the know-how, that have done their research, know how to conduct ourselves ethically. But
right.
yeah, rates are a big thing. I think that's the biggest struggle that the industry
Yeah, I was
has,
gonna say, I
maintaining
was gonna
rates.
say that.
Mhm.
I had
Absolutely.
somebody, I needed a edit on one line,
Mhm.
and they, all of a sudden they were, well, that's not included, in what you already paid. And they
Yeah.
wanted another like $200 to make a change to this
Wow.
one line. So
Yeah.
you're right. Rate, I do feel that's a big that's a big thing,
Yeah.
honestly. Being
Absolutely.
ethical in any industry, even my industry. So
Yeah, and that's part of what worldvoices.org strives to do is set those best practices
yes,
where it's one thing to be able to do the job, but then conduct yourselves ethically and,
right.
be communicative,
Yeah,
and respecting the wishes of the client and, and understanding what the contract is, having a contract and establishing what is included in the price.
yeah,
If there are revisions, is that established beforehand?
right.
And I think, a big part of that is communication.
Yeah,
And I think you are very good at that. And I think we've established a rapport where, hey, we know each other's email etiquette or, our response times. And it's
yeah,
like being responsive,
yeah,
um, but giving that direction
yes.
to talent and knowing exactly what you need, but then giving that to the talent and that they're going to give that back to you.
That's
Um,
absolutely right. And it actually leads right into my next question. for business owners, people leaders, or content creators who would come to you and hire you for a voiceover job. What advice would you give them to ensure that you guys have a smooth collaboration?
Exactly. And it really does come down to the communication. In fact, it's so important that there's actually a page on my site where I do provide some steps as far as how a voiceover project would generally go.
Okay.
I used to work at a college, and with college courses, you have a syllabus. Well, I
Yes.
actually have a little syllabus that I use,
Good.
and like, hey, so here's
Yeah.
step number one, and it is figuring out, deciding what the project is, the script. And really, the first part of that is trying to determine what the voiceover sound, pacing, style is going to be. And a
Mhm.
lot of times you want to establish that before you do the whole project.
Yeah.
And maybe doing a few test recordings, a few auditions per se, but then just do a few test recordings to know that you are in the right style, pacing, and vibe that you want for the
Mm.
project before you do the rest of the project. But
Yes.
establishing those ground rules beforehand, and then that makes the project go much smoother. But then the communication, being responsive, and then delivering the recording and everything promptly, because we know that clients have tight deadlines, especially when it comes to commercials. A lot of times those are very, very short deadlines, and they need
Mm.
something in very, very short notice.
Yeah.
That's pretty common in the industry, and that's why voice talent are prepared to do something like that. That's why we're at home. We can do things from our home studios, but
Yeah.
then also on the road with the
Mm.
travel rig.
Yeah.
But being ready for those short notice projects and be able to do those quick turnarounds, because we realize that industry is fast paced as well. There are those quick
Yeah.
deadlines. So the quicker we can get that to you, the quicker that project can get done. But not too quick to where we're just racing through it. We want to
No,
still do good quality.
exactly. That's right. And most of the time you get things written up like in Microsoft Word. Is that the typical format?
Anything written out that we can have on
Okay.
screen or anything that we can print out. I
Okay.
usually have things on screen. I have a couple in my studio right
Mhm.
now, but there are a lot of people who prefer to print it out and then
Okay.
they can make the markups on their script. But either
Okay.
way works just fine. Yeah.
Okay. And I will say that you wear a lot of hats like me. I feel like you're a business owner. I'm a business owner, and we wear so many hats. We're doing 50 million jobs. We are the accountant, the marketing person, the sales guy.
Yes.
So tell me, what do you do to manage your stress?
Mhm.
Um, I will say that you probably couldn't scream at the Super Bowl last weekend because you have to maintain your vocal health. It was a good game though. But,
Yeah, it was. Well, my Patriots weren't in it, so I couldn't
yeah,
scream all that much. But
okay. But
but no,
how do you manage, work-life balance? That's the buzzword, nowadays. So
absolutely. And the biggest thing for me
yeah.
is exercise, staying fit, working out. I've disciplined myself, and I've made it part of my life for the past 30 years. It was one of those things I just started doing just on an occasional fun basis. But then I realized, like, listen, when I work out and I stay fit and in shape as much as possible, I'm not the
Yes.
best at it, but I can stay healthier.
Yes.
And when I can stay healthy, the voice stays healthy, I'm usually available. Then I can be more ready for a client when they need a voiceover.
Yes.
A lot of my friends, they get sick all the time. I get sick occasionally, but not as often. I really don't.
Yes.
And that way I can be ready for those projects and be available for clients whenever they need something. But that's been a big part of
That's
my
great
life.
advice.
And whether it's weightlifting, cardio, calisthenics, anything, just try to vary it up, but making it part of your daily routine. I'm
Yeah.
a morning guy. I do it in the morning. Get it done and out of the way. It gives me
Yes.
energy for the day. But here's the thing, I've written a blog about it as well. I have it on my website, but that's where my creativity comes into play. I could just sit in the booth or at one of my workstations here and try to think up ideas for what I need to do. But when I work out, that's when I generate my best ideas. I'm not saying I come up with best ideas, my better ideas.
Sure, yeah.
That's where that creativity, that exercise generates that for me. That's me
Yeah.
personally. That's why
Yeah.
I include it in my daily routine. So I can come up with the ideas, then finish up the workout, then I can go apply those to my work.
Yes.
That's what works for me. And I encourage it for anybody, whether it's just doing, I don't know, a handful of push-ups a day. Who cares? It's something. It gets the blood pumping. In fact, here's a funny thing that I did a long time ago. I did a quick video. It's on my YouTube channel. But before I do a project record, maybe it's an audition or something, what I do is I go and run up and down the stairs really quick. I go, and I come right into this. Well, I catch my breath a little bit.
Yeah.
That gets the blood pumping.
Yeah. Towel off.
Energized. Exactly. But that's kind of one of those little pre-recording routines I do, is just to get the blood pumping, get me energized, and then look at the script. Obviously, I'm not going to do that for like a very somber script. I'm like, oh, is this what you need? But it's just one of those things. But exercise is the biggest thing for me, and I hope I can encourage others to do the same. Yeah.
No lemon tea or
espresso
to soothe the throat. No, who was? I think it was a singer, and she was saying she had to do lemon or something before she started.
Yeah, a lot of people do the tea. I'm not a big tea guy. I mean, it's not bad, but
me neither.
I probably should do more of that. I probably should, but it's usually the exercise that I focus on most. The diet's not the best for me. I try.
Yeah, I'm a coffee gal. Yeah. So
and I have to be mindful about that. It's dehydrating. So it's hydration is a big thing too. I mean, I walk around with this all day.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Half the time I have my bottles of water, but half the time I'm like, why is my mouth so dry? It's because I'm drinking so much coffee.
Yeah. A quick little tip on that is, like, right before you record, Granny Smith apple is usually a good solution to that. Just, quick, it gets everything going. And
wow.
So that's one of those little tips. But
I wish I knew that before we started today, but okay. Well, this has been so interesting. I know that there are going to be tons of people like, how do I get in touch with this guy? This is amazing. How can they get in touch with you, Cameron?
Thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate that. My website is CameronThomasVoiceovers.com. And it's out there. It's got all sorts of information on there. It's got all my demos, and it's got several pages you can look through, the blog as well that I referred to earlier. I also have a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, Instagram, and a Twitter X page. So it's all out there. I try to keep them updated as much as possible. So there's a lot to coordinate. That's part of the marketing, but it's fun. I think I fell into just doing more videos for YouTube, just like you're doing. Yeah. And you do a few, and then it's like, wow, that was fun. I might do more.
True.
And I started doing some goofy things on there, but some serious topics, some goofy things. But after a while, it's like, wow, I don't know, there's like probably over 100 videos now, and you're building up to that. So it's like, it's fun though. It really is.
That is amazing. Well, we are going to paste all of your social media links along with your bio in the description underneath the videos, so everyone can find you and connect with you. And it's just been a pleasure. That's our time, everybody. And this has been the Learning League podcast. And we just thank you so much again for joining us today, Cameron. Cameron Thomas, everyone. Thank you. Until next time. Bye.